years. Uh, Interestingly, I had a meeting with him, a personal meeting with him on April 1st. I was in Rome for some other meetings, and one of which was to meet with him about a couple of issues here locally. And we were together for just under an hour, and just he and I. It was not my first time meeting him, but it was certainly my first time sitting down with him one-on-one, and we had a couple of things to talk about, but then also had some time to just communicate informally and learn a little bit more about each other. And I was very taken by his friendly nature, but also about his awareness of the dynamics, not just of the church in the United States, but more importantly about the church around the world. And so I'm certainly thrilled that our church has selected this man whom I believe will be a wonderful 267th successor of Christ in the chair of St. Peter. And I pledge on behalf of all of the Catholics of the Diocese of Charlotte our support, our prayers, and our best wishes to Pope Leo XIV. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
So I'm very interested. You got to meet them. Sometimes sitting down informally, just chatting with someone tells you a lot about who they are.
Sure.
What did you pick up about who this person that we now call Pope is?
You know, I would say that the thing that struck me the most was just his calm demeanor. Very, very relaxed. That was some of my experience of him. I was at some meetings back in September that he was leading, but it was in a much larger gathering. And again, he was talking about big issues and important things, and still just had a certain calm about him. But that was more appropriate, I think, in that one-on-one meeting. And his interest in me and his interest in what was happening here in Charlotte, in particular the things that we were talking about, I just had this sense of someone who cared very deeply about what was important to me, more so than maybe what was important to him.
Can you describe that meeting so I can make sure and describe that right? When it was and what type of meeting it was?
Right. There were just some administrative issues that I had to speak with him about. It took place on April 1st. And it was a very warm and collegial, we worked out a few things that needed to be addressed, and it was great. It was a really good time.
Bishop, are you surprised that someone from the United States was selected, and in the path of Pope Francis and his bent towards social justice? Do you see all of that continuing, and are you surprised?
I'm very surprised. I never would have dreamt that we would see a pope born in the United States in my lifetime. I thought eventually it would happen, but I have to admit, sitting there watching him walk out onto the loggia, I was very shocked. So I don't mind admitting that at all. But at the same time, knowing that he was someone who had been considered, I thought, yeah, he, and at least in my dealings with him, I felt like he certainly had the qualifications for it, and has had experiences in diverse parts of the world that allow him to bring to this position, I think, a unique blessing that we're going to see very quickly. Related to your questions around Pope Francis, each Holy Father is their own person. And there's not a sense that they're committing themselves to carrying out, this particular agenda or not. There's only one agenda, and that's the life and mission of Jesus Christ in the church. And so it's not really about, what Pope Francis did. It's more about what the Holy Spirit's calling the church to in this moment. That said, I think the fact that he took the name Leo XIV, in the last Leo was Leo XIII, who was the Holy Father at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, and one of the greatest encyclicals, which is a papal document of tremendous weight in the church, that was written by Pope Leo XIII, was called Rerum Novarum, which was very much dedicated to the working person in the world, and how working people have not only rights, but also can see God at work in their work, elevating the work that we all do every day, not to just something that we do for a paycheck, but something that enhances the dignity of every human person. And so I find that particularly interesting, but I'm not here to say that that means that that's what he's going to do. But clearly, that's how Pope Leo XIII is known, and so I think Pope Leo XIV is maybe giving a nod to that dynamic.
Bishop
Everyone
Martin,
keeps-
Yes.
you mentioned the fact that he was born here in the United States, but also has connections to Peru and Latin America. Can you speak a little bit? I mean, it's unique. He's not only born in America, but he's bridging both North and South America. Can you speak a little bit about what that connection will mean to the church in both of the Americas?
Sure. I think that's the wisdom of God at work through the cardinals who elected him, to bring someone to this very important position who has had experiences in some very diverse parts of the world. When you look at the reality in Peru, when you look at the reality in the United States, when you look at the reality in Italy, those are all, and being in Italy these last few years, being in contact with bishops from all over the world. And so he's had a unique ear listening to the realities of the Church Universal. And I believe that will situate him very well in being able to address the issues that are universal.
Everyone keeps saying it's a surprise that it's an American.
Sure.
What makes it a surprise? Why is it?
I think it's a surprise because in the grander scheme of, you got to think about the life of the church over 2,000 years. We're a little bit of an afterthought when it comes to, at least the United States. Certainly there were indigenous peoples here forever, and as long as there have been in any other part of the world. And so, but at least our role as a country in the Church Universal has been less impacted, has impacted the church less, only because the amount of time in which our country has, been able to contribute to the universal church. And so given its relative youth in that regard, I think that's what makes it a little bit different. I think the other thing is that there's always the challenge of wondering, the United States is a superpower, and what does that mean? And I think there are people that think that that a cardinal who becomes pope, goes into that with the particular optic of the country from which he's from. Obviously, he's going to have that experience, but he's not in that position as an American in that position. That's not what he's been selected for, and no one knows that better than he does. And so I think there had been some concerns, maybe more in different circles, that when you have a pope who's from a world power, what will that mean in world relations? And so I think that's where there may have been some thought that, the cardinals might have been a little hesitant in that regard, which I think speaks well of who Cardinal Prevost is, that the cardinal electors felt that that would not be in any way a detriment, but if anything, it would be a blessing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Bishop, the future of the Catholic Church, how is that going to be portrayed here in Charlotte now?
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. And it doesn't remain to be seen just because we have a new pope. It remains to be seen because as each and every Catholic in this part of the world, in our Western New York, Western North Carolina, I used to live in Western New York a while back, I apologize, but in Western North Carolina, in our part of the world, how do we respond to this moment, to this call of faith? If you'll notice that Pope Leo was very passionate in his speech from the Loggia today to mention things like the universality of all people, that we're all one together. The strong themes of peace that he emphasized over and over and over again in a world that's torn by division. And so I think all of us, just on day one, we're called to ask ourselves, what are my perceptions about my being a brother or sister to people all over the world? Do I see myself in communion with others? And am I seeking to live a life of peace with others, even in the smallest everyday examples of my life? And so I think that's where the Catholics of Western North Carolina have to ask themselves, okay, I've heard for the first time Pope Leo speak about these things that he's passionate about. How can they become a passion for me?
It felt like everything went fast this time as well with the conclave and the election, even compared to Pope Francis getting nominated. What are your thoughts about that?
I would be making it up if I gave you any thoughts that were worth recording on what the speed of the conclave means. I have no insight into that other than the conjecture of a guy standing in front of a microphone. So I won't bore you with what I think about that, because I have nothing that I think would be meaningful. It happened in the time that it happened. Amen. Not to be a downer on, press conference remarks, but
I have a super simple, relatively uneducated question. I didn't know Americans could be pope.
sure. If you understand a little bit that there are no geographic determinations in the Catholic Church that are such that limit anyone from consideration of being the Pope. So there's no, you couldn't be from Guatemala, or you couldn't be from the United States, you couldn't be from this country or that. There are no geographic distinctions that would limit anyone who otherwise is eligible to be elected Pope. So could have been a Pope, an American Pope 100 years ago. It's nothing, that's not something new. But not a stupid question at all, no.
Bishop Martin, one of the other things that he echoed in his remarks, he was talking about synodality. He talked about Pope Francis's focus on being a listening church. What do you think that means for the church in the current era, and also for the church here in the Diocese of Charlotte?
I agree. I thought those were particularly poignant remarks, and I felt like maybe I was reading more into it than I should have, but I thought he got a little emotional when he referenced Pope Francis, and I'm sure he probably did. And so realizing the legacy of his predecessor, a man with whom he had worked closely, over the last few years, I'm sure they had developed quite a relationship. And in fact, the day that I was able to meet the Holy Father in Rome back in September, Cardinal Prevost was there in the room as well. So it, and I'm sure it wasn't the only time. He's in a position where he would have met regularly with Pope Francis, and so I'm sure that was moving for him to be able to see himself as Pope Francis's successor. But more importantly, he's not the successor of Pope Francis, he's the successor of Peter and the successor of Christ, our high priest here on earth. And so I think that probably means more. The fact that he focused in on synodality, I think, gives us all a hopeful image for what we can expect moving forward, which is we all have to listen to each other more. We have to listen to each other more. If you think about the issues of our day, so much of what brings conflict is a desire to want to be understood more than to understand. And what Pope Francis was doing, and I think Pope Leo now has picked up upon, is saying, let's place the emphasis not on being understood, but on understanding, on listening. And we can't do that unless we listen to one another.
Will there be any special masses today or throughout the week to celebrate this?
Right, great question. I think for many of us, it was a little late in the day when all of this came about, and so organizing things for today is probably a little challenging, but we will, as the Diocese of Charlotte, be celebrating a special Mass tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at St. Matthew's Church here in the Charlotte metro area. What's that area called? Is that Ballantyne? In Ballantyne at 7 p.m. We'll open that to anyone, any Catholics or any people that would like to come and pray with us together tomorrow night. I'm sure that individual parishes around our diocese will be having individual separate masses in honor of the Pope Leo's election, but the one that we'll do for the diocese as a whole will take place tomorrow night at 7.
Do you know when you'll have interaction with him again?
I don't. There's nothing that I have on my calendar that says, head over to Rome and, talk to the new pope, and I doubt,
You wish you did.
I'll doubt that he's going to be calling me anytime soon. That said, we have a pilgrimage planned to Rome in November, and so it would be my hope at that time to see if I might be able to schedule an audience with the Holy Father at that time, but I'm betting I'm about 4 billionth in the list of people that want to be able to say hello. Yes?
When a pope is elected, is there like an agenda or something that in the beginning, like steps that they like to have a plan?
Sure. I would suggest, and again, not having ever been a part of the process, but of what I know of, what's probably as important as the conclave is the meetings that take place prior to the conclave that have been going on since Pope Francis's death. And what has emerged during those meetings have been topics that cardinals from all over the world have come together to talk about agenda issues that are real and that need to be addressed. So I would think that there are some considerable things that came up during those times that Pope Leo will have at the forefront of things that he wants to address, but I can't speak to what they might be.
See a Cubs or White Sox?
That's a great question, and I'm sure it will be made known soon and very soon by people who will be asking him all those types of great questions.
Is there any history of him, small little bit of history of him in Chicago, like that you know of?
Again, his bio is already, he's got his own Wikipedia page, and you can see the particular things. He's a graduate from Villanova University. You can imagine they're over there in Philly celebrating as well. So obviously some of the things that he was able to accomplish in Chicago was not as substantial as some of the other things that he had done in the rest of his life, some of which was because, again, he was a member of a religious community, as I'm a Franciscan. He's an Augustinian, and so he was part of a religious community that took him to a number of different places other than the Chicago area. Anything else?
I don't know if this is an appropriate era, but I want to speak to you in Spanish if you could.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
This is
tell him, we'll do that afterwards if that's okay.
That's fine.
Great. I won't badger the rest of you with my pathetic Spanish, so. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
If you go to charlottediocese.org, charlottediocese.org, and click on the About page, you'll get Bishop Martin's biography, his photo, and other information about the diocese. Just go to charlottediocese.org, DIOCESE, diocese, charlottediocese.org, click on About. And if you need anything else,